Listen Up with Jim Potts. Listen up, business owners, CFOs, human resource managers, and all managers and supervisors. Jim Potts is answering and addressing your questions and concerns, helping you stay out of court. Furthermore, please be advised that Jim's answers are not legal advice and are only intended as a guide based on his years of experience. The phone lines are open. 1-855-4-J-POTS. That's 1-855-457-6887. You can also email us at listenup@jameswilliampottsllc.com. Ready to listen up? Here is Jim Potts.
Jim Potts back on the air. Well, hello everybody. How you doing? And for those of you in California, I hope you're enjoying this special time when we're getting all of this warm weather. I just got back from the East Coast, and I can tell you it was freezing back there. So now these old bones are warming up out here in California again. Hey, listen, I want to start off by talking about an email that I received from an employee. And the employee is basically asking whether or not their employer can stop this individual from job hunting when they're out on a leave of absence. And specifically, it was an FMLA leave. And she writes in and says that she's out for surgery. She was informed of a new job at another hospital, and it looked like no one had applied for the position, and she wants to know whether or not she can apply for this job while she's out on leave, and what would the consequences be in doing so. She wants to know whether or not they can take her pay back, etc. Look, it's an interesting question, and I got to be honest, I'm not aware of any provision in FMLA that specifically addresses this as an issue. Common sense approach, in my opinion. The leave doesn't prohibit you from job hunting while you're on a leave of absence. It does prohibit you, of course, from doing things that you shouldn't be able to do, such as something that's going to aggravate whatever the condition is that you're out. So, for the reason why you're out. But the legal answer, I guess, and I hesitate to call it a legal answer, so it depends on whether the policy applies to any employee. So if the employer has a policy that nobody, when they're on a leave of absence or any kind of leave, whether it's FMLA, workers' comp, etc., can do any job hunting, etc., then they have a policy that's in place, and I think you have to stick with the policy. I guess you have to understand that if you're out on a leave of absence, you should be out on leave of absence, recuperating, and also not out job hunting and doing other things that could be contrary to your return to the work environment after the employer has granted you the leave of absence, whether it's legally required, not required, in terms of the type of absence, leave of absence that you're on. So look, can you do it? Bottom line answer to the question is yes. You can probably do it. If your employer finds out about it, they're not going to be happy, obviously. The other thing is that a common question we get is whether or not, the employer who finds out somebody is actually working while they're out on leave of absence, because what they're doing is testing the waters at a new job. They claim they're out on a leave of absence, and now they're actually physically working. And in case that job doesn't work out, then they got something to fall back on with their former employer, or with the current employer at that time. So you should not do that. So if you're going to leave, but don't be out on a leave of absence and be working someplace else, because I can tell you right now that the employer would have every right to terminate you. And I know there's been some issues out there about those kind of situations, so I can tell you would not be successful if you tried to sue the employer as a violation of FMLA if you, in fact, were working another job at the time. So to answer your question, can they stop you from job hunting when you're on leave of absence? In my opinion, the answer is no. All right? Could create some other issues, but bottom line is yes, you can do it. And if you're going to do it, I think you should be a little bit cool about it. And don't be posting it on the internet, etc., because I think you could get yourself in trouble. People use the internet for a lot of different reasons. The other thing I want to throw a little caution to the wind about is the top 10 mistakes that employers keep repeating, which is my main topic for the day. Look, 36 years at this, you look at these situations in which employers repeatedly make the same mistakes over and over and over again. And, organizations like mine are in place for a reason. We really do try to assist the employer. And sometimes it can be a little frustrating, I can tell you. I've got this one new client, and everything that the client wants to talk about is based upon information that she hears from other people in her industry. Look, personally, I really don't care what everybody else in the industry is doing. I think that you have to be careful sometimes with that because that's how you end up in your class action lawsuits. For those of you that have representatives out there, listen to them. Best advice I can give you on that. But let's talk about these top 10 mistakes that employers keep repeating. And I'm not giving you these, by the way, in any particular order. The first one is failing to document an employee performance issue. I cannot tell you, day in and day out, we handle these different types of hearings, or we go to these mediations, and right away we want to ask the employer, the manager, whether or not they have the documentation in place. And they want to say, yep, warn them 100 times. No, that's not the question. Do you have documentation in place? Well, yeah, I wrote it down. No, that's not documentation. Documentation is when, in fact, you write up a written warning notice and then you have the employee sign it. Now, look, you can't force employees to sign things. So you still do it. If the person refuses to sign it, just write on it they refuse to sign and use a witness. But you got to understand, you've got to do this documentation. And it's the same thing over and over and over again with some employers. So that's one of the top 10 mistakes. Now, number 2, ignoring routine updates to your employee handbooks. Employee handbooks are extremely important. I know that there are employers out there who feel that and have been advised that employee handbooks can get you in trouble because it locks you in. If the handbook is written properly, you don't have to worry about that. And as a matter of fact, coming up, let's see, I believe it's on, I'm not sure of the date, but it'll be 2 podcasts after this, and we will have on there the employee handbooks and the, top 10 issues with that, things that you need to have on that. So you might want to listen to that one if you're catching this one. But you've got to update your employee handbooks. We get calls, people haven't updated their handbooks in 10 years. That doesn't work. All right. The other thing that we get asked is that what happens with the previous handbook that they wrote. You don't have to collect those back. New handbook can supersede a prior handbook, so don't worry about that. Most handbooks will say that this handbook supersedes all previous handbooks. And an employee really cannot come back and say, well, the handbook I got first is the one I go by. No. The employer has a right to reissue a new handbook. And matter of fact, they can do it every year if they want to change the policies. And the other calls we get sometimes, what happens when an employee refuses to accept the handbook? That doesn't matter. It doesn't change what the employer's policies are. So whether they refuse to sign the acknowledgement for a new handbook because they like the policies in the old handbook better, don't even worry about that. Once you put out the new handbook, that handbook goes out to everybody, even if an employee doesn't agree with any of the new stated policies in there. Okay, number 3, omitting preparation for a union organizing campaign. Some of you probably don't have unions, don't have to worry about it, but the unions are still active, although the word that I'm getting is that the unions are in decline right now. I'm not going to get into it about the unions. But just understand that you do have to be careful. You need to prepare if you hear some union organizing that's going on. You need to adequately prepare for that. And you have to understand that you should get some assistance with that. Don't try to do it on your own because there are guidelines that if you interfere in certain ways with union organizing, that's federal stuff and you can really get yourself in trouble. Next one. Employers not regularly auditing your workplace safety and other OSHA type issues. You should have a company or somebody that comes in and does an audit of safety. You have to understand that the times are changing. OSHA is like any other state agency and federal agency. They need money. They will issue citations if this isn't caught up. If the employer is not bringing the safety standards up to speed. So the summertime is approaching. There's big issues regarding people getting extra breaks because of the heat and things of that nature. So make sure that you're heading in a direction that somebody comes in, does an evaluation of your current safety program, reads your current safety and procedure manual if you have one, and if you don't have one, you need to think about getting one. All right. Number 5, placing hard caps on an employee's leave of absence or assuming that the FMLA's 12 weeks are a ceiling for an employee's leave. Well, for those of you that listen to me consistently or listen to my blog, you know how I feel about that. This business about having a cap on when somebody leaves, and if they're not back, you're going to terminate them. I'm telling you flat out, don't do it. All right, this is a major issue in some states. California is one of those states as an example. So don't be placing hard caps on these people when they go out on leave of absence. I know it's frustrating, but don't do it. Number 6, skipping the interactive process when considering accommodations for an employee's disability or even their religion. Same thing. You've got to understand that this business is about the interactive process of communicating with the employee, sitting down with the employee and having discussions in these 2 areas is critical. You've got to do it. Number 7, terminating an employee without warning for anything other than the most egregious of infractions. It's true. You've got to make sure that you follow the documentation, as I said way back on number 1. You've got to make sure that when you terminate people that you've got some kind of disciplinary action that you've already taken against that employee. Because otherwise it's too easy for a plaintiff's counsel to turn around and argue that their employee was the best thing since sliced bread, and that's what they always say and think. And here you have no documentation. Now, if they get caught stealing, fighting, things of that nature, that's going to be a lot different. All right. 8, not staying up to date on cybersecurity. All right. You've got to understand that, once again, with these hackers out there, you've got to make sure that you've got your proper security in place. Number 9, skipping annual harassment training. Look, California is one state requires employers to have the training every 2 years for the sexual harassment training. Some states don't have it. But my best advice is, look, you need to have it, if not have it every year, if need be. But what do you think the lawsuits are coming out of? Harassment. And now we've got to deal with bullying as issues as well, which in my opinion is just another definition of harassment. But you've got to do the training. Employers have a tendency to put it on the back burner. Don't do that. It's going to cost you money. And the last one is, of course, asking employees about working off the clock. Listen, I shouldn't even have to have that conversation, but yet we're still getting situations with various labor board claims about having people working off the clock. Do not permit your employees to work off the clock, period. Okay, with that last comment, it's time to close out this segment, but let me remind you that you can also hear us on Facebook at Listen Up and subscribe to us on iTunes. Just search for Listen Up with Jim Potts. And as a reminder, we take calls every 3rd Friday. We can be reached at 855-4J-POTS or 855-457-6887. Or you can email us at listenup@jameswilliampottsllc.com. Okay, I'm Jim Potts, and I will continue to fight the fight. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for being a part of Listen Up with Jim Potts. We take your calls every 3rd Friday at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time for your questions and concerns. Call us at 1-855-4J-POTS. That's 1-855-4J-POTS. Again, that's every 3rd Friday at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time at 1-855-4J-POTS. Like us on Facebook, subscribe to us on iTunes, and link up with us on LinkedIn. You can also email us at listenup@jameswilliampottsllc.com. Until next time, make it a great week.